All right, so Mr. T, I'm gonna ask you one more question, right?
Okay.
Okay. In your opinion, what is the solution for the black community in America today? Right?
Mm-hmm.
As an example, anything that you might see a problem with education, you might see a problem with healthcare, you might see a problem with societal ills.
Mm-hmm.
What's your solution to the black to some of the
Wow,
some of the problems that's going on in the black community today?
man, that's a mouthful, right? Culture. We have a great culture as we talk about black people, right? In the black community, we have a great culture. We have a great historical culture, and I think that as a society, we got to get back to teaching that part of it. That's part of it. You know, you and I were just talking earlier about the folks who can do in our communities who don't, right? And so where's that disconnect, right? So there's a huge disconnect there as a community. You know, I struggle sometimes with saying that folks in our culture, in our community, don't do enough, right? But is it more a case of you not doing enough, or, and we know this is to be true, is that the game is so fixed that it's hard, like, right? So you got the people who are trying to get that traction every day, right? Some people get traction, but the way the game is set up, you know, it's 6 steps forwards, 2 steps back. And if that's what you're doing because of the way the community is it's tough. Beautifying the community, right? Like when I drive around the city, man, I just, you know, there's just some communities where the streets are littered with trash, man. And I grew up in an era where, man, you picked up trash, when you saw trash, so how do you teach that, right?
Right.
Or if you rent, because I don't have a problem. There's no issues with people who rent homes, right? That's historically what blacks have been moved in to do is, right? But when you live in those homes, in those places, you should care for those places like you live there, right? And so that's that part of it too. I think that more involvement, what I'm finding in the community is that, and I don't know if it's so much the pandemic changed a lot too, right? It became, in a lot of ways, a new excuse for not really wanting to do anything. And I'm not just talking about culturally this community, but all communities. But ours is hard hit because we were already struggling, right? And I don't know. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. I think providing our children with safe spaces to be in, that they can feel that they can learn, they can be loved, they can be taught. Back to when we all shared raising our kids like a village. There's no more villages in our communities where, you know, we know how, you know, on my street, you know, all the parents on the street, they knew, you know, wasn't no nonsense at school, wasn't nothing, you know, it was those things. And the culture is our children are different. The respect factor is no more in a lot of cases. You got young people who talk to adults extremely disrespectful. Now, there are some times that the way adults talk to kids, it creates that space that, like, a kid is gonna stand up for herself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I get that part, but I think that there needs to be more work in our community in how we communicate, like conflict resolution. We need to have those, you know, those people need to be taught. We all need to be taught those skills, you know, conflict resolution skills, but definitely we need, our communities are food deserts, man. Like, that's the other part. Like, the health ramifications of black people in our communities are, like, just dwindling because there's no place to get fresh food. There's no place to get water and, you know, and not juice and soda and greasy food and potato chips and all the things that are the only choices that we have to give our kids because that's what's available to us, right? So I think those are some really good starts. And then definitely I think you know, policing has to be different. That's a whole nother big ball of things, you know. So yeah, I think that everybody needs to want to do the work. And right now, everybody doesn't want to do the work. I mean, there's just people who have really given up on our communities, and there are people in leadership roles who have given up. And it's like, for me, if you've given up, then step aside, because there's people that are waiting in the wings to be able to come in and make. There's people with great ideas about how to do things differently. You know, we was talking about housing the other day, and like when I was growing up, I mean, we were talking about that, like what they call them, what do you call people that were in the houses and just would live in the houses? Like if I'm homeless and I just walk down the street, squatters, right? Remember squatters.
Yeah.
So when I was growing up in Detroit, I used to always say, like in the '70s, squatters in the houses when people started to leave neighborhoods. I never thought that was a problem. If the person walks away and leaves the house, and then another person comes and says, well, yeah, the heat's probably on, whatever, but I'm not damaging the house. I'm not taking out the pipings. I'm looking for some place with my family to be warm and to be safe. And I used to always say in Detroit, in the '70s, man, why don't they just give the squatters the houses?
Right.
And I hate to use that term for a human, right? So the person, why don't they just give that person the house? Figure out how to give that person a house, let them live in the house. Now we give that person a job. Now, because those houses sat empty, and then before you know it, you got 6 feet of grass. People's taking the bricks off the house. In Detroit, they had brick houses, so they would come, and it was literally guys I know who started brick companies, and they were literally just pull the bricks off the house, clean the bricks, and then load them in these dump trucks, and go sell the bricks off a house they didn't own.
Yeah.
And then it just created all this decay. Well, you got to also figure crack cocaine, and then with Detroit, they had a Devil's Night for many years, so they set houses on fire, and they couldn't control that. Devil's Night, yeah. So that Detroit lost probably 100, 200,000 homes over a 15, 20-year period because just of that. Like, that was the known thing. Like, when I was a kid, you was throwing eggs, and maybe there was a few fires.
Right.
But I remember, like, late 70s, early 80s, during the crack epidemic, when the houses started to be empty, people would start going in, just hanging out like we did as teenagers, just smoke a little weed and shit, hang out, drink OD 40s, and hang out with the girls in the neighborhood. We all hang out. People started setting the houses on fire. And not understanding that, all you're doing is driving down the property value of all the other homes that are around the neighborhood. So we just, I don't know. I digress, man. I think I'm all over the place. So
you mentioned the food deserts and lack of availability in communities around the nation, right?
Yep.
To get proper nutrition. Let me ask you this question from what you said. Do you think that when electing government officials, aldermen, state representatives, anybody that's very local, we talking about the neighborhood governors,
all right, yep,
right? Even the mayor.
Yep.
Do you think some law should be passed in every city in America, in particular inner cities, that every time they give out a license to do business as a grocery store or a liquor store, convenience store, anything, that it should be a fair balance of good nutritious stores to the convenience store? So,
absolutely.
yeah. So
absolutely.
if you got a convenience store that's selling potato chips and bubble gum, should we make it mandatory that the elected officials have to give out license and permits to people that's trying to have produce stores or fresh meat markets? If that's what people are going to use, do you think that's something that should be looked into from a community perspective?
I think
because
so.
Other than that, we seen here in Milwaukee, and I want you to speak on it, but we seen here in Milwaukee that we celebrated a few months back a black grocery store being open.
Yeah.
This should be mandatory.
Yeah.
In order to get these votes, it should be mandatory that you gotta have 50-50.
Yeah.
But
I
don't
like so even the term black owned businesses, right? I don't always like celebrating that because I think it should just be really common.
Yeah.
Especially in our communities. Like, there should not be stores that are non-black stores that really hold all the power in what we purchase.
Yeah.
right? So like you take food stamps, or it's called something different,
EBT,
EBT or whatever. You know, you got the corner gas station, or take EBT. So if it's easier for me to go to the corner gas station and buy some juice and some other stuff and stuff that is really not nutritional for anybody because they take EBT, then what are we saying? We don't really care about what. I think there should be a restriction to liquor stores. I've always said that, man. 1 every 6-7 blocks, period.
And that's a lot.
And that's a lot, right? But right now you took it looking at 3-4 easily every 5-6 city blocks.
Some of them across
right?
the street from each other.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I agree. I think that actually, and I know there's a couple of gardens here in the city, and I think that they're starting to get some traction to do that. But definitely, there should be stores, and I don't know who should open them and what they should be, but there should be stores where there is always fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, healthier, because again, it all comes down to, as a race of people, because of what we get, we end up being forced to eat. If we don't have, like us, I still have to drive kind of far to get what I want, but I know what I will eat and won't eat, right?
Right.
But it's not always an easy space for me to get, but everybody doesn't have the ability to go and say, well, I'm going to go here, or I'm going to go here and get my food, right? And so they have to go what's offered to them. And so now we're creating a culture of, because the families can't do it, the children learn in the mindset that that's where you're going to go and get your food, right? And so now, unless somebody ever tells them that, look, you can really go outside your community and get these healthier choices,
Check this out. Do you remember, just last thing on that, do you, it's 2 parts. Do you remember some years back, maybe 10 or so years ago, here in Wisconsin, we had, and it might be a little bit farther, a little bit closer in time.
mm-hmm.
We had a situation where one of the government officials started talking about what should be bought with EBT or food stamps,
Yes.
whatever it's called.
I remember that.
And they got a lot of pushback.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that? Should restrictions be put on an EBT card to purchase more healthier foods, or should we leave it the way it is?
You know, that's a good question. Sometimes restrictions are about teaching. Sometimes restrictions are about learning. And I think that a lot of times, again, when I go back to what I just said, that a lot of us do things because it's the way we're taught, right? Doesn't make it right or whatever. But if I'm 3 generations in this city, in this community, what average of people really know what good food choices are? And I don't want to make that sound like people are naive or stupid. That's not my intent.
No, we get
But
that.
you know what I'm saying. But it's like, should there be? Maybe. Yeah. That's tough, because then you're telling people. But also, I believe that if you're going to put those restrictions, you've got to put those restrictions with those options being there. Because you can't tell me. Listen, you know. So 40% of what you buy has to be healthy choices, right? Off that EBT. But you can't not offer me stores in my community that I can go purchase those things, because again, then the game just set up for me to fail, right? Because you say, oh, these are going to be the restrictions. If you don't do the 40%, we're going to take, so many dollars off of it. Well, yeah, and then you're going to take it off because I may not have the transportation or the wherewithal to get to where I need to get to purchase food.
Right.
The food you're telling me I should purchase. So then I agree with them maybe doing something like that, but you got to have the stores available in the communities to the people who could do that, And it's because it's like at Aldi's, for example. I'll go to Aldi's up on Sherman, almost by Silver Spring.
Mm-hmm.
There's that Aldi's there. And you go to the Aldi's that's over on Port Washington, day and night.
2 different stores.
Totally different. Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
Cause like for example, I buy wine at Aldi's, and I go to the Port Washington store. But then I was in the one on the day, and I walked in there, and I was like, even the produce,
Oh,
just the way the produce was even just on in the racks. I was just as, you had 80% of the apples were dented because they just poured them into the bin, and then you go to Port Washington, they just neat, and 80% of the apples there are in pretty good condition.
demographics.
Is it the customers that's doing it, or is it the workers or the manager or the person who's running that store that's doing it that way? You got grapes that are like, come on, man, like, because you got them marked down so far because they so horrible looking.
Yeah.
That like, come on, man, like you shouldn't even be trying to sell these.
It's demographics. It's going into certain stores, in particular those stores, when you go into certain neighborhoods, you know that they are catering to a certain demographic.
Yes.
That's like the store manager, the store administration, whoever they may be.
Mm-hmm.
They are deciding what goes on in that store. I went into one of the stores. It's Aldi around the corner here, right around here on
Capitol. Yeah. Yeah.
68 from Capitol. So it's one right there. And I went in there and something was outdated and they had it marked down to 90 cents. I mean, when I say it was outdated, it was like 4 or 5 days past the expiration date. And it was marked down to 90 cents.
Mm-hmm.
That shit would not have occurred on Port
Oh,
Washington.
yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So I believe that it's just strictly demographics that they know is going to come in. You know what I mean? And who's not going to complain about it.
Right.
You understand?
And that's the part, right? So like I gone to that. I think it's Uptown. I want to say it's on Villard. You know that old grocery store up there?
Yeah.
Going up towards
51st?
Yeah, probably up in that area. And this was years ago. I went in there and I was looking for something to eat, and I went in and bought a cereal, the Oat brand cereal box, and I was gonna eat dry cereal. And opened it up, and it just didn't even smell right. Man, it was 3 years old, man.
See?
It was 3. It was crazy. So yeah. So I don't know,
You
man.
get that.
But I think it's hard because the other piece of that is, and I'll end here, but the other piece of that is, it makes our children also incapable of learning, because if you don't have the fuel, like the true fuel that you need to go to school and focus on the grades, and I'm talking about good food, balanced meals. Like, remember the old balanced charts we see when we was kids? I ain't seen one of them in like 20, 30 years,
I
man.
took them down. They recreated the chart. I
They
just seen it the
did.
other day.
Wow. Okay.
It's bogus.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah,
bogus.
absolutely, yeah.
It's bogus. When you're looking at different things like that, the food charts, the nutrition, the balance that you
Mhm.
need to have a strong mind,
Yep.
healthy body,
Yep.
we don't have that anymore.
No. And we don't, and in a lot of cases we don't even have the teachers in our communities now who got the right kind of fuel to do and focus on teaching our kids the way they should either. So that's another
Well,
part.
also when we start thinking about this, last thing I will tell you, right?
Yeah.
But when we start thinking about who's running our community,
Mm-hmm.
when I look at the community, what you see the majority of is who's running it.
Yeah.
So you see the churches, the liquor store, and the fast food restaurants.
Yep. Pretty much.
The heads of those pays all of the government officials,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Who can pay these people is the ones who run what go on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why you see a McDonald's every 8 blocks. That's why you see the liquor store on 2 sides of the street, so
Mhm.
you won't be missed.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? That's why you see the church.
I don't know. Can you
So-
buy liquor with EBT?
That's no, I don't
Oh,
think
you
so.
can't. Okay.
But you probably can.
I was being cynical. I'm
No,
sure.
you
but
probably
yeah.
can.
Yeah. I mean, you go to the right store,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
right? Because if
Yeah.
you come in my store,
Yeah.
I can easily bring my register to
To
say you
see.
bought anything, and I'll sell you liquor all day
Chips.
long, and that could be
So you
True.
bought 5 bags of chips instead of
exactly.
pint or whatever.
Wonder what
You know?
that
Yeah.
would be a nice investigative reporting, right? To see
Right,
what these
okay.
stores are doing.
And then you gotta look at the churches, man. People are believing. There go that word again. They believing what somebody's saying,
That's
right?
that's
and
the
never being found or researched to be known to be true. See what I'm saying? So
I was gonna say, don't play it for my mother, but churches, man, the dysfunction of Black America, man.
and that's peace. We'll leave it right there.
Okay, all right, man. Appreciate you. I'm gonna get out of here.